Why is it okay to joke about sexual violence? How has it become normalized, and how does this apply to me? While I can't tell you the whole story, I can tell you this. A few years ago, my family and I were vacationing in Vietnam. We spent a few days in Ho Chi Minh before we traveled to a beach called Da Nang, just off the historical town of Hoi An. The beach had beautiful blue waters with the sun glistening off the top of the waves and little boats in the distance. One day, my mom, my sister, and I were walking down a sandy soi, shopping for groceries. With shacks on either side, we turn into one somewhat similar to an American mom-and-pop shop. There are two cashiers waiting who both immediately stand. The first walks up to my mom and starts bargaining. The second walks up to me. I take a few steps back. The stranger turns their head to look at my mom, who has turned her head to look at some produce, before turning back to me. And then, as the former president of the United States so eloquently puts it, this stranger grabbed me by the pussy. I back up some more, round a shelf, and we're out the door within seconds. Hi, I'm Kate. I was sexually assaulted when I was 10 years old. I was one of 433,650 that year. And I have to be honest, I don't find it funny when people joke about it. Now, I just briefly referenced the, we'll say unique, Donald Trump. Footage of him saying those comments, as well as some other very misogynistic ones, was released during his 2016 presidential campaign and discussed in the following debate that took place October 9th. And these tweets were tweeted in response to that debate by a woman named Laura Ingraham. Laura Ingraham has been an employee of Fox News since 2008, the news channel that my deaf grandfather blasts at max volume, regardless of who's visiting. So this means that my 14-year-old sister, my cousins who are 13 and 8, have been subconsciously learning that this language is acceptable, that they can use it and they won't be held accountable. Zero ramifications. They might even be praised. Trump ultimately faced no repercussions, and the fact that he, as a sitting president, was forgiven amplified the idea that this kind of language is excusable and ultimately normalized sexual assault. And he wasn't the only president. According to CNN, President Rodrigo Duterte of the Philippines has made comments such as "shoot them in the vagina." And to paraphrase the New York Times, British politician Raheem Kassam told a female colleague to tape her mouth and her legs in response to a campaign announcement. According to Global News, this past International Women's Day, March 8th, Lieutenant Colonel Taylor of the Canadian military resigned in response to sexual assault. But not just the fact it was happening, it was the way it was being dealt with. Brushed aside, blown off, taken as a joke. And that's what happens when you joke about assault. You brush off the severity of its actions. And while these examples don't contain sexual humor, when you continually watch or see something that promotes sexual assault, the next step is to make an insensitive joke. It's a very dangerous game to play. Has anyone here seen The Breakfast Club? Basically what happens is 5 kids get put in detention, and over the course of the day, they become friends. And 2 of these kids are Bender and Claire. And you can tell the whole time there's a little something going on between the 2 of them. Well, in one of the scenes, Bender comes into the library where the other kids are, but he's not supposed to be there. And then the teacher watching them comes into the room as well. So Bender hides under Claire's desk. But Claire is wearing a skirt that day. So Bender decides to pull a dick move, and he sticks his head in her skirt between her legs. And the rest of the kids, they laugh, they cover for Bender, and then they go to the back of the room to smoke weed. And at the end of the movie, Bender and Claire are in the parking lot, and she gives him her earring, and he puts it in his ear, and he walks through the field, and he does the fist, and the music plays, and it's this totally iconic moment that completely distracts you from the fact that this film romanticized assault. It took me 60 seconds to explain this scene, and there's a chance that some of us didn't realize it portrayed laughter at Claire's expense. Didn't realize that Bender was laughing at his own joke, assaulting someone. Didn't realize that I made a satirical joke. And according to the Rape, Abuse, and Incest National Network of the United States, within the now 73 seconds it's taken for me to explain this film, another victim has been assaulted. Let's take that in for a second. But it's decades after The Breakfast Club. There are still TV shows and characters such as How I Met Your Mother's Barney Stinson and Michael Scott from The Office who are just as insensitive. Throughout the course of their TV shows, both characters film naked women without their consent. That is literally assault, and it's cueing a laugh track. And it's what's causing students in ISB hallways to say, "You don't have my consent," in improper, incorrect, and insulting contexts. But it's not just the entertainment that Hollywood creates, it's also the people it employs. Harvey Weinstein is one of the most infamous sexual predators in Hollywood. Having hurt nearly 100 victims and facing 23 years in prison, this man is currently sitting in a jail cell with an estimated net worth of $25 million US. And yet British comedian James Corden had the audacity to say, "For the women who watched Harvey Weinstein bathe, it must be weird seeing them in hot water." Aside from that, this is an industry that employed possibly hundreds of accomplices who stayed complicit about assault for years. It's an industry that, honestly, should not be leading by example. Now, let's be mindful. It's incredibly beneficial to normalize the discussions surrounding sexual assault, just not the actions, because that normalization leads to insensitive jokes. Because we joke about what we know, what we're familiar or comfortable with. And whether you watch Fox News once a week, or a Hollywood movie twice a week, or The Office every single day, you are familiarizing yourself with sexual assault, and you are subject to a casual nature of sexual humor. So you make a joke. And yes, humor can be a great tool. It can help people overcome terrible trauma. Tina Fey, Amy Poehler, Liza Donnelly, they all do a great job of this. My English class spent, I don't know how many weeks, learning about Voltaire and Candide and satire and criticism and blah, blah, blah. But not every 16-year-old kid can use satire in a mature fashion. Because satire, criticism, is not the humor we see out in those halls. I've seen boys and girls alike calling each other pedophiles for fun. Ostracizing any kind of physical contact to the point of calling it rape. That's not criticizing our society. You can be funny without being offensive. And if you can't make a joke without making it at my expense, you're just not funny. And the sad truth is there are so many people out there with stories so much worse than mine. It's reported by the National Sexual Violence Resource Center that 1 in 10 children are sexually abused before age 18, and that 50% of global sexual assaults happen to girls ages 16 and below. That's my age now. It's much more common than one may think, but you never know who that person is. That person could be your friend, Lupita Nyong'o, your teacher, Gwyneth Paltrow, or Terry Crews, your sister, and you just have no idea. For years, nobody knew, nobody thought that person was me. Thank you.